Welcome to Thinking Out Loud, where we dive deep, ask big questions, and explore what really shapes learning at JCHS. I'm Mary Ellen Hunt, Director of Enrollment Management, and your host. Today we're talking with Assistant Head of School Michael Brody. With both classroom experience as well as a background in educational administration, Michael has long been interested in the why of education. Why do we do things the way that we do, and is there a better way that not only supports great student outcomes, but also helps us build lifelong learners? Critical and original thinkers who are intrinsically motivated to be curious and ask great questions and seek knowledge. With that in mind, we are talking today about how grading systems impact the way that a student perceives their learning. Mr. Brody, thank you so much for joining us today.
Great to be here.
So I'd love to start with asking you about this idea of grading for learning and what that means. How does it show up at JCHS?
The basic idea of grading for learning is that student grades should really just reflect the mastery the students have of the classes and what's being taught in the classes, both the content and the skills that are part of the classes. And so part of what grading for learning does is take out of the grades some of what would be considered noise in other traditional grades, like compliance, for example, or something like attendance. These things are important. Of course, being in school is how students learn. But when attendance is part of the grade, and a student misses a bunch of classes, it doesn't, and their grade is impacted negatively by that, it doesn't really reflect what they learn in the class anymore. It reflects what they learn minus some penalty for not having been there a certain number of days. And those type of things make grades not reflect the actual learning students have done, and we're trying to really have the grades convey really clear information about what a student has learned and as little else as possible.
And what they've mastered at the end of the year.
Right.
So at JCHS, I know our approach, our system has shifted a little bit over the years. Can you talk about, for instance, the 12-point scale, why we moved to that system? How does that work?
Right. So we ditched the traditional 100-point scale and went to a 12-point scale, where each traditional letter grade you could think of is associated with a number on the scale. So a 12 is an A+, and an 11 is an A, and a 10 is an A-, all the way down. There's a couple reasons for this. One is it takes out the distinction between an 88 B+, and an 87 B+, and an 89 B+. And it works to take away the incentive for students to try to, if I could just get one more point, it makes a difference. Like, oh, I have an 87, but could I just have that 88? And take the focus off the points or some kind of system of point collecting, and instead put it on the learning, and not worry about whether or not there's a point out there that they should have had that would make a difference. We just say B+ is B+. There aren't levels of B+. It's sort of a level of accuracy that I think is a little bit pretend, that people can really distinguish the difference between an 87 and an 88, and as if that actually has any meaning for a student's education. The other reason is that the 100-point scale is really a scale that's really biased towards failure, that all the grades between 0 and 59 represent failing. So a teacher has 59 ways to tell a student they failed, but only 9 or 10 ways to tell a student they got an A. And that doesn't really make a lot of sense. And so on a 100-point scale, getting a score of, let's say, a 10, when you're averaging grades, is absolutely devastating to a student's overall grade, because a 10 is disproportional to the scale, right? The A band is 10 points wide, the B band is 10 points wide, the C band is 10 points wide, the F band is 59 points wide. So that doesn't actually make a lot of sense when you stop to think about it. And so here, an F on our scale is a 0, which is proportional to the overall scale. So those are really the two reasons we've moved from a 100-point scale to a 12-point scale.
It brings a lot more clarity to it. So JCHS often talks about cultivating original thinkers. I want to kind of go big picture a little bit and ask you, how does the school's educational philosophy, beyond grading practices, create an environment where students are encouraged to take intellectual risks, to think creatively?
Let me talk about a grading policy way that we encourage students to take intellectual risks, which is that we allow students to rewrite any paper or project or take a retest on any test they have taken. The idea is that we don't want students to feel like that they didn't do. But learning, making mistakes is part of learning. I think we all know this about our lives and our careers. Like, we learn sometimes through the mistakes we make. But we don't want to set up school such that students feel like taking a chance or making a mistake is that it's game over once they have taken an intellectual risk and it didn't work out. So that would encourage students to be much more conservative and be less risk takers in their own educations. We want students to go for it. So by allowing students to rewrite a paper, if their first out-of-the-box attempt didn't work, they get a chance to redo that and to learn from their mistakes, because that's how real learning happens. And so when we do that, if a student, for example, wrote their first paper and got a C, and on their second paper got a B+, we don't average the two grades. We give the students a B+. What we care is that students learn it. And if they learn it the second time around, that's just as good as the first time around. There isn't anything better about getting it the first time. Maybe it's better if you're a student, because if you put the work into your first draft, then maybe it overall saves you time because you don't have to go back and rewrite your paper. So there are still incentives for students to do their work well the first time. But it allows space for student mistakes or student risk-taking to not be penalized.
Nice. Again, big picture, in a world where college admissions, standardized testing, those kinds of measures of success still really do honestly play a big role, how does JCHS balance preparing students for those kinds of external benchmarks while also, balancing this deeper goal of fostering creativity and intrinsic motivation?
I think that's really one of the most important things, getting students to be intrinsically motivated learners. If that's the one skill they could learn in high school, is to love learning and to engage in their schoolwork because they are interested in learning, there's probably nothing better we could teach them. And part of what we're trying to do through our grading and assessment practices is to remove a lot of the extrinsic motivators as much as we can, to have students not be chasing points, that school is not about scoring. School is about learning. And the more we can place the emphasis on, we care about your learning, not about your point chasing, and we don't care about it on the first take, we just care about the learning overall, is what we could do. And our students do great on standardized testing. I mean, our standardized testing results are great. Same with our AP classes. I know some schools have moved away from AP. And it's wrong to think about AP classes as test prep classes. I think that's people who critique AP. They say, well, there's a test at the end and it's just a big test prep class. It's not. AP chemistry is like an excellent college level chemistry class that just happens to have a test at the end. Right? We don't require students to do the testing at the end. They opt into the AP testing if they want to, and it can be great for some students who have credits to take to college, but we're not focused on the test results. We're focusing on providing an excellent college level class, and there just happens to be a standardized test.
You mentioned the AP and how some people are moving away from it. I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about what are some of the benefits, though, of having an AP curriculum available to students.
Well, there's a bunch of things. I mean, one, just from ourselves as an educational institution, it's great to be benchmarking our students against an international cohort of students. Do you think your chemistry class is a good one? One great way to find that out is to find out how students do on an internationally benchmarked test. And it tells us that our AP classes are really good classes. Our students do really well and learn a lot in those classes. I think there are some areas where, and a lot of the AP classes also give a huge amount of flexibility. So AP literature is a great example. There's no required books that students have to read in AP literature. Our English teachers get full freedom to create to read whatever books they think are best for our students to learn from. We don't have every AP class here, but we have adopted it in places where we feel like it serves our students and serves our community.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being with us today, and thank you for taking the time out to talk with us.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for joining us today. If you've enjoyed our conversation, please be sure to follow us by clicking subscribe. Each week we talk with a member of the JCHS community about what really matters in learning and the uniquely JCHS approach to education.